Hello, and welcome to Midwest Game Fest Online 2022. Almost said 2021. I am here with Aaron, the Shadowrun missions developer. Say hello.
Hello.
Before we get too far into it, I wanted to let everyone watching know that we will be taking questions from chat, so please post any questions that you might have, and I will make sure that they get answered. But now, without further ado, Aaron, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. My name is Aaron Dykstra. I've been the Shadowrun missions developer for all of 1 year. Prior to that, I was one of their proofreaders and one of the basically playtest organizers, as well as writing a couple of the missions. In fact, the final year before I took on the role, I think I wrote 6 or 7 of the missions that year, just because I needed some extra help. The pandemic's been hard on a lot of folks, so anytime I can contribute, always glad to contribute and help out.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair.
But yeah, I've been helping with the Catalyst demo team for about 6 years now, running games at the big conventions. I can go to a couple conventions a year, and so I try to at least hit the big ones. And I've also been helping out with Rem Alternus, which is a group of creatives that are trying to create alternative content. And they've been doing streaming, and they've been doing a lot of work with creating a trailer for a cyberpunk fantasy future world, which is an awful lot like Shadowrun, but trying to make a pitch to get access to the license. And so I've been sort of helping out with some of the behind the scenes writing and whatnot.
Awesome. So switching back to Shadowrun just a little bit, what is the sort of the difference between Shadowrun and Shadowrun missions?
So Shadowrun missions is the living campaign. It's a consolidated set of rules and basically house rules that make it a little bit more consistent and try to make the gameplay a little bit more balanced. That a normal home game will get just because the GM is able to work more closely with the players. And so with a living campaign, you've really got to be able to support any player that comes and sits down at your table. And it gets pretty exciting and a little bit saucy at times when you see what some of the players are able to produce. But it takes place in the same world. We hire writers from within our demo team agents, as well as the broader community, to contribute missions, and we get them published to PDF at some point. It just takes a little bit of time. But yeah, we're trying to create content for players to see and for GMs to run. And it doesn't have to be as part of missions, as part of the living campaign. They're produced so that, there's additional content out there that folks can use and run.
Now, you kind of mentioned that it takes a while from concept to PDF. About how long does that development cycle take?
So it takes. It's always tough to say because of with the pandemic, and really. So there's two parts of it. There's the first, which is from concept to the first of the conventions, which is Origin. Origin's Game Fair. So that is a year. It's 10 months. So it's 10 months for that part of it. And then from Origins to Gen Con, that's my break time of the year. I don't have any missions I have to produce. I can take and maybe prop my feet up for a little bit. And then after Gen Con, we start the process of submitting for artwork, getting the artwork back, and then getting it off the layout with Catalyst. And so we're sort of to the side of Catalyst. We're freelance writers. When we get it done, we get paid and we submit the mission content to them. So we've got stuff. So right now they're releasing season 9. Mission 4 is the next one that's going to come out in PDF. That was written in 2017. And so,
wow.
Or 18, somewhere in there. We're a little behind. But yeah, the pandemic hasn't been exceptionally nice to any of us.
There's a lot in that I kind of want to touch on, but let's talk about the seasons. So what are seasons for Shadowrun missions?
This is something that started back when they started doing the living campaign. They have seasons 0 through season 10, and that's how we organized the writing. So that you knew that you had story arcs. So there was a start, a middle, and an end. It didn't matter which order you played them in, but there was a story that was usually sort of written in throughout. And if you were really perceptive, you were able to pick up some of those story elements. Generally, there's 6 missions in a season, and it's just how we've decided to organize it. And then as we move past those 6 missions per season, we've decided to try to expand that and see how far we can stretch my time. For 2081, we took a shot at getting 12 missions in a single season. Turns out that's too much. So we've switched up and we've gone down to 8. And so we're actually doing 8 missions a season. It's pretty comfortable right now in terms of the amount of editing that we do and contributing back to the writers, because the writers are learning along with us. We usually take new to the industry writers.
So when you're working on a season, like you said, there's a story thread that kind of goes through all of them, but they are also each their own unique adventure. How do you sort of balance the ongoing story versus what the players experience at the table?
Well, a big part of it is making sure that the writers have their own sort of feel for it, right? Like the worst thing I could do is go to a writer and say, like, I need you to write this exact mission, right? I need you to take place in this location with these NPCs, and I need it to be an extraction or a sabotage or one of the sort of standard styles. And so typically what I'll say is like, well, you've got this part of the arc. I need at least mention this sort of story element, and it has to include this one NPC. And they don't even have to be a main NPC. Just include them somehow. And I let them go and write something that's interesting. Part 2 of that is we take it to playtest. So we run these things a few times with a group of generally veteran GMs And we usually use GMs as players too, because they know what they've seen at the table. And we just let them go ham on it and try to break it. And sure enough, they always find a lot of rough edges in it. They won't find all of them. We do still find new ones at the table when we take it to conventions, but usually it comes out like, hey, this part was really fun. This was memorable, and that's what we're looking for.
So I want to step back from seasons, but we're gonna come back to it.
Okay.
But I want to talk about that you just spoke on with playtest. So how does that work? How do you play test some of these missions?
It is a surprising challenge. The playtest that we run, typically we have to allocate for bigger than what we would expect on a table. So the goal of a mission is to produce 3.5 hours of content for a convention, because that's our convention slot. We know that a player group will actually guaranteed go down some avenue we never thought about, or maybe we have. So we want to produce extra content. So we usually aim to produce about 5 hours of content in a single mission. And just knowing that the players may take things in a unique way. We've also encountered players that are exceptionally efficient, where I have definitely seen it at the convention tables where they will finish a mission in 2 hours because they know exactly what they're going for. They know exactly how they're going to do it. They've played together for 10 years at conventions, so this is their core group of gamers. This is their chance to get together and attempt to break poor GM. And so that's part of the reason why we make it a little bit longer. And so what we need to do is typically we'll say, hey, I've got a play test, and I've got a play test group that I toss this out to. I need these archetypes. Take a character. I want some of you to have characters straight out of character generation. I want some of you to have characters that have an extra 150 or 200 karma experience points. And then let's go in and we're gonna play scenes, but we're not necessarily gonna play for the story. I want to ensure that it's balanced, but I also want to ensure that the things that you're doing, you feel like your character's archetype is being used. Because the worst thing is that bring a character to a table, and it doesn't use what your real strong skills are. You want to feel like you're exceptionally useful at that time period.
It's so interesting to me talking about that, because here I was sitting here thinking, oh, well, you got to balance your story beats. And here you're going on talking about not just story beats, but mechanics and making sure all of your archetypes are accounted for. I bet that can be difficult sometimes.
I think that's the more difficult part. In terms of the story beats, one of the things that I tell a lot of the authors when they're getting started is we organize things based on scenes. And so we have a pretty standard template that we use. It's scan this, which should give you one paragraph that really dives deep into what is in the scene. Tell it to them straight, which is your chance as an author to feed your words into some poor GM's lips, and they will make the worst run-on sentences possible.
Love it.
I purposely read all of them out loud to find when they're really, really bad. I mean, I feel bad when some slip through, but I really do try to make sure it's not too much of a tongue twister. And I love alliteration. So we have tell it to them straight. We've got behind the scenes, which should give an idea of like, this is the area that they're going to. This is the type of security they're going to encounter. This is the type of tests that we expect that they're going to have to overcome. Pushing the envelope, which is our way of either telling more story if you have more time, which most of the time you're not going to in a convention, but you may have a chance if you buy it as a PDF and take it home. And then there's a debugging section. And the debugging section is really for, this went way off the rails. So how am I going to bring it back on the rails without totally making the players feel like they've lost agency? So when we look at the scenes, one of the first things I say is like, this scene has to do something. There's a reason for this scene to be here. The worst reason, we've got our raid. So thank you, Raiders.
Yeah, I noticed.
So a scene can give information. A scene can present combat, right? Like that's pretty classic role-playing game. A scene can provide a type of challenge. So it could be a social challenge, it could be a hacking challenge, it could be just a challenge of a chase scene if we've got a bunch of vehicle riggers. Like, so there's a lot of things that you can set, but it should make a decision point. The players have to make some decision to get out of the scene. And that's really what the scene mechanic is for in terms of story beats.
So getting back to sort of what we were talking about with the current season, what is that story arc, those beats that you're trying to hit in the current season?
So it's interesting. I adopted the current season from my predecessor, Danny Oliver, and so I'm still trying to piece together where we want to go with it. There's three main arcs that we've sort of geared around. The first is a story element where there's a group of Shadowrunners that they dislike when people go off the rails, when they go. I don't want to use off the rails when they have collateral damage. They're not careful as a runner, and so they're a little bit more pink mohawk. They're a little bit more reckless, and so they're moving in. And Shadowrunners by nature are kind of like cats. They don't like to be herded. They do what they want, and they may scratch you, and so there's a little bit of tension there with this group that's trying to organize with a bunch of cats that don't want to be organized. Like, just let me sit in my box. The other arcs is we're playing with there's a group of triad that are in the Seattle area. So the current season is set in Seattle, and so this group of triad is having a little bit of internal tension with another triad in the area, and you're brought in over a number of different parts of the seasons to help solve this problem, and usually just sticking your foot in it and suddenly having a huge more tension to have to go deal with because suddenly one group of triads is angry with you while you've been helping the other. We've got a third one. That one I'm going to hold a little bit closer to the vest because we're going to see a little bit more of it at this upcoming convention season. But yeah, that's the main arc.
Thinking about, I know this is your first as sort of the Shadowrun Missions developer, but thinking of past seasons, what was your favorite one so far?
I like them for different reasons. If I look at the Chicago ones, which were really well loved at the different conventions, it was a little bit more of a Wild West sort of setting, and you dealt with some pretty hard-hitting difficult enemies that you had to fight and overcome, as well as some evil backstabbing corporate types. And I can't give away too much because I actually know some folks in the chat that are actually playing through it. And so there's definitely some good twists as you move through the seasons. And I love those sort of twists, right? Like you think that you like someone, you think they like you, and then it turns out that they've stabbed you in the back. And that's difficult to do really well. When you're looking at players, if you do that too often, they don't trust anyone, especially in sort of that living campaign style. And so for the most part, we tend to have much nicer Johnsons than you would see in a GM's home game. And that's just because we have limited amount of time. We don't want to spend the entire mission slot where basically the players are investigating the Johnson to see if they trust them enough to go do the job. The other one that we did, and these are all within the last probably 10 years, is Neo Tokyo as a setting, which is much, much more black trench coat. It's a police state where there's constant surveillance. And as a Shadowrunner, you have to kind of keep your head low or else it'll get taken clean off by the military, right? Like, because they're just waiting to storm in on somebody who's breaking the law. And so I like them both for very, very different reasons. And I think players probably like the Wild West more. Like when you can go fire off a rocket launcher at a dragon, sometimes that's super appealing. But the sneaky and the planning and making sure that the legwork is done correctly, that is always like near and dear to my heart.
Well, and I bet it's kind of nice that you have those different varieties in the different seasons of the mission. So yeah, one season may be your total jam, and then the next season may be someone else's total jam. And that sounds really neat.
Yeah, we're trying to get a little bit more transparent with the players ahead of time, going like, hey, this is what you should expect from this season. You should don't we're not. I think when we moved from Chicago to Neo Tokyo, it was a bit of a surprise. So it's sort of a culture shock, and so we lived, we learned, and we're trying to improve upon that. Just be a lot more transparent with, hey, this one is going to be a little bit more, you know, careful, cautious. So when you take your character in, just be aware of that.
Yeah, that's fair. Since we do have so many more people in the chat, I do want to reiterate that if you guys have any specific questions for Aaron, please put them in there and I'll make sure to ask him for him. The only one that I've seen so far is, if a Johnson isn't betraying the PCs, are they really a Johnson?
That is a fantastic question. They're just too nice is probably the better way to put it. They're giving money out for free, like really they're charity cases at that point. I do want to call out, like, specifically Tesla and Kieran Hawk in the chat is one of the writers for the ones coming out this summer, and so he has one of the missions, and I am looking forward to playtesting it in the next couple weeks.
Can you give us any spoilers or teasers?
Well, it's going to involve a bit of corporate intrigue, and so I am looking forward to seeing exactly how it turns out.
Now, isn't corporate intrigue kind of the bread and butter for Shadowrun?
Well, there's a couple different layers of play. Corporate intrigue is what you think about as sort of the mid-level play. The low-level play, you get street gangs, which is like, if I go back to Neo Tokyo, you were getting basically the runaround from a couple different Yakuza clans. And then when you got the next season is when we amped it up and we started bringing in more corporate influence. And then you get high enough level, you start really talking high level corporate government. You start talking about, like, did you make a deal with the dragon? All the things that you shouldn't do, but that's where all the big new yen is.
So, black trench coat, pink mohawk. Can you elaborate on that?
Or mirror shades. There's also mirror shades as well.
Okay.
So there's it's really a spectrum. When you look at the play, and it has nothing to do with the mission, although the mission itself can be written with the intention of it, but the GM controls so much of that experience. I usually consider Pink Mohawk to be lots of explosions. The police presence is there, but they're generally a little bit inept. You're gonna run roughshod over things, but you'll be challenged with some of the combat situations. But it is all big and brash and loud, and that is 100% Pink Mohawk. The exact opposite end of that spectrum is Black Trenchcoat, where things are super lethal. If you step even slightly out of line, corporate security is coming down on you extremely hard. And they're bringing out the high threat response teams to stomp all over you. There's security cameras everywhere, so as soon as you fire your gun, like, the local police know. As soon as you cast the spell, the local security mage, his watcher spirit has seen it, and that's sort of the feel. Is it should feel a little bit more oppressive, and that you're rewarded for being sneaky. You're rewarded for keeping your head down, as opposed to Pink Mohawk, where we celebrate the explosions, we celebrate the wild chasing down the middle of the expressway while everybody's firing guns. And mirror shades right in the middle. A little bit of balance of each. But what I've seen at most conventions is it always starts Black Trenchcoat and it always ends Pink Mohawk because you run out of time.
I was gonna say that I've seen way too many tables go that way. So
You go
we've
cinematic,
talked
yeah.
a lot. Oh, of course. We've talked a lot about the writing aspect of this and balance of story beats and stuff, but I kind of want to know about GMing, right? What's the craziest thing that you remember happening in a mission at a con?
You always remember the horror stories, but I will start with the fun ones. There's a group of players that go to Origins every year, and they created a rock band called Trolling Thunder, which it appears in some of the stories that have been created since, because they're they become beloved, right? Like you've seen this crew over and over again. They created a couple years ago a new group because they felt that Trolling Thunder was, a little bit too much at this point. They wanted to slow it down a bit, so they created a new team called the Pirates of Pizzazz, and then they would do the jazz hands, of course.
Oh, of course.
And I had them at my table, and there's 7 in the group, and at most conventions before the pandemic, we would have, at Origins or Gen Con, 7 people at a table plus the GM. But one of them couldn't get in on it. I had one random person at the table, and so I ran with 8. And they had pooled their money to buy an airship. And so they come flying into the mission. They go pick and they knew what they were doing. Like, they saw the hook. They saw the fact that it was going to go like horribly sideways, and they were just like, nope, we're gonna railroad the GM into this other complete path. And so they stole the guy that was supposed to die in the second scene and took him away to hide him away, because they knew he was going to die. And then at that point, it was just trying to make it up as I go along, and it was hugely fun and hugely scary to run, but that was good fun. But yeah, there's always a couple occasions where it's a bit broken, and trying to deal with that. That's good. That was broken in a fun way. Other times it's where somebody wants to torture information out of someone, and that's not much fun. But some people want to go through that as role play. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is being flexible. The players are going to come with the craziest ideas, and it's those things that create the best stories.
So speaking on that, how do you personally deal with like lines and veils at the table?
Traditionally, I haven't, and well, I have with things that I do with home groups or small groups that I've created. When I'm at the conventions, I haven't done it. I've relied on the social cohesion of the missions themselves are written to not be. It's not going to touch on the things that are hugely controversial. We occasionally will insert it as part of flavor, like so. I'm kind of giving away a little bit. So if anybody is
plug your ears.
Yeah, if you're playing tomorrow night with me, close your ears. But there is a Bunraku parlor, which is the whole concept is they've taken out basically all self-control of a person, and they use them as sex dolls, and it's one of the darker aspects of the world. We've used them in missions twice out of like, I want to say 50 or 60 missions. We very, very hesitantly use that. Drug use, we're aware, can be a trigger as well. So a lot of times it's not like a main story element. It may be in there and players may bring it themselves, but we try to keep it out of the story. Really, it's just trying to create like bold, brash. Sabotage is a fun one. Occasionally we do wet work. Occasionally there's been a couple missions where you try to ruin someone's reputation. Those can get a little bit saucy at times. But yeah, I have I'm a big fan of the lines and veils as a method. Although the X card is a fantastic method as well. Or just talking to folks ahead of time, like on a one-on-one basis, like, hey, are there things you just don't want me to cover? I'm I will tell you the things that are in the scenario ahead of time, and you just tell me like should they be pushed down or just taken out completely.
Does that ever come up as part of your playtest stuff as well?
It's been brought up a couple times where they see it's a little bit too heavy-handed, or occasionally when it's interesting. A lot of the folks that are running the playtests are ones that are sort of drenched in Shadowrun lore, and so
Right.
they see it as normal, right? Like this is part of the world, and you have to sort of step back and go like, well, if I've got a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old kid at the table, like, is this still cool, or should we
Right.
pull this?
Yeah,
That's
that's fair.
Yeah, it's probably my sort of my litmus test for if it's something that's probably a bit much is would a 15-year-old kind of give me the bold deer in headlights look?
So I know that this is a completely opposite direction of what we were just talking about, but I did just get a question that I feel like I have to ask from many of you know Brad, and I feel like this has a story behind it. When will we see pixies as a playable race in missions again?
My guess is you'll see it before 2023. Yeah.
He's immediately typing again. So, talking briefly about missions, I kind of want to know. We mentioned COVID earlier, changing the writing process. How has that changed the gaming process? How are you guys sort of adapting to this new social situation?
Well, it's been interesting. So the Catalyst is definitely a company that firmly believes in we get together face to face and roll some dice. There's been a lot of folks, actually Brad is one of them, really advocating online play. And I think the best thing we've got is the Shadowrun Missions Online. That is a group of Catalyst GMs that run missions content for pretty much anybody who wants to come in and play. They do charge a little bit of money to take care of some of the Discord boosting or the website hosting, but that's a really good way for players to play anytime from anywhere. I ran for Gen Con last year. I think I was one of 2 Catalyst GMs that ran Shadowrun, not last year, the year before, 2020. Ran for the Gen Con online. And it was interesting because I got a chance to talk to the players, and a lot of them don't live close enough to any of the big cons to go and actually participate. And they love that they were able to do it online and get a chance to play.
Yeah, it's been something I've been really excited about too, to be able to pull someone from Seattle, New York, Toronto, Mexico City, all in one game.
Yeah, we've got one player that does show up. That's from Brazil, and she comes and plays, and she has a great time. She's also joined the demo team as well, and runs games in Portuguese down there. So it's pretty fantastic to see it grow.
Yeah. So with online games coming to big cons like Origins and Gen Con, but right at the beginning of the pandemic, but now have kind of tapered off, what do you think the future holds for online games?
I think it's going to continue to grow. I think the tools are getting better. I think companies are seeing that it's worthwhile to support, and it doesn't cost them an arm and a leg to support. And I think that's going to drive a lot of that. I think there's still some difficulties. Face-to-face is easier. Like there's the lag with any sort of online communication. That slight delay, you don't know if someone's done talking or not, right? Like that's a little bit tricky. I've been running online games for probably about 10 or 12 years at this point. It is definitely easier with a smaller table. Like in person, I have no problem running for 12 or 15 people. Online, I really prefer 5. But but yeah, I think it's going to continue to grow. It's just a matter of time and a matter of putting forth the resources for it.
So I want to piggyback off of that briefly. What tools do you use to GM for Shadowrun missions? Specifically
I use
online tools.
Yeah. So Discord for my voice and video, and I know a lot of folks aren't comfortable with the videos, but just the voice is fine by me most of the time. Voice is nice because I can hold a finger up and try to get people's attention, and they can do that back to me. So I do like video. The other one is using Roll20. Roll20 is a really good tool although I'm kind of a bit of a Luddite with that. I spent in the early days, I spent a lot of my personal time developing macros for Map Tools, which was an open source online tool that you could use. And I just don't have the energy to do that all over again. And so yeah, I use Roll20, but primarily as a dice roller, and then I'll drop a map on so people can look at it. But I'm not doing all the tactical maps and that sort of thing, just because I never know which way the players are going to go, and so dropping a map on sometimes is a little bit sometimes we don't use a lot of the prep work that I do, so I kind of YOLO it a bit.
We do have a couple of questions from the chat, so I'm going to pivot a little bit there. Cape and Mask asks, what type of players or groups would not be a good fit for Shadowrun? I'm wondering how my group would do with it, particularly since they can be over-analyzing.
The legwork portion of a run is a bit interesting. So I love all games. I'll start with that. I love heist games. I love sort of the insurrection game or the gang game. Blades in the Dark is much better for an over-analyzing group, and the reason is because you tell the story through flashbacks. Shadowrun is told linearly in motion, right? So you get the job. It's time to go do some research, understand it. Like, if we're going to hit this facility, is the facility heavily secured? Like, do they have magical support? Do they have matrix support? And you start this planning session, and then you realize that you have no idea how you're going to do it. And so you create 3, 4, 5 plans with another backup plan just in case all the other backups fail. And for some people, that's the game, right? It's not so much doing the run, it's doing the brainstorming and planning for the run that becomes the game for them. But it really depends. If you're a group that loves to plan and that's the fun for you, like, you'll love playing Shadowrun. Like, all the what ifs are great fun. If you want to get to the point where you're actually like overcoming it, it's about balancing. Like, when do you say, like, all right, let's just go? And so if you've got a good GM, the GM can sort of be the impetus to say, like, all right, you guys have done enough planning. Let's get moving. Let's go hit this building, or let's go help extract somebody from their current working situation.
So backtracking just a little bit about online tools, we had a question again from Cape and Mask, wondering what you think of Foundry and if you have any experience with that. And I would piggyback and say also another tool, Fantasy Grounds. Does that have any Shadowrun support as well?
Fantasy Grounds, I do not believe has Shadowrun support. I'm trying to think back. Foundry is very much in line with the driven off of volunteers. And so there is some support in Foundry for 5th and for 6th edition Shadowrun. I like it. I mean, it's a good tool. For me, I've been optimizing a little bit for some of my players that are less tech savvy. And I find Roll20 to be a little bit better for the less tech savvy. Foundry takes a little bit more troubleshooting to get up and going. Same with Fantasy Grounds too. Fantasy Grounds, I think, has a little bit more technical know-how that you need. The experience that you can create is, I think, richer with those two because there's so much more at your fingertips. I even used Astral Tabletop before it went under, mostly because I really like their animated backgrounds, because that was their big selling point.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of tools, like I tend to pick what most of my players are going to be comfortable with.
So I know character creation can be a little crunchy. What tools do you recommend for that?
So there's a freeware tool called Genesis Character Builder, which was written by a single developer over in Europe. It's really well put together, and if you use Roll20, you can export the character sheet into Roll20 from it, which is fantastic. I personally use Excel to build my characters, but that's my own preference because I'm going to go back and forth so many times that for me it's just easier. But yeah, those are the two main. There's also Hero Lab, which was,
Of course.
I think it had better support in 5th and 6th. They've really got the core book, and I think they've got Firing Squad, but they don't have all of the books in there. So I'm not sure of the status of it. But yeah.
Now, you've mentioned 5th edition and 6th edition quite a bit. For folks who prefer 5th edition, can they still do that with Shadowrun Missions Online?
So the Shadowrun Missions Online does support 5th edition still, but the current there's no more missions being developed for it. There's no more books being produced for it, and so it's sort of reached end of life. I recently put out an addendum for the guide just to cover the last 2 books that nobody got. We never got around to adding to being mission legal. So, but for the most part, not to call it dead, but it's there's no more content being produced for it.
But if they wanted to do older content, they could.
Absolutely, and there's nothing that stops players from playing these at home as well, right? Like we've produced the missions as part of a PDF. You can go download it, and run it how you want. It's and like I said, we try to make sure there's enough additional sort of story hooks in there that you can take a mission and then find your own way, find your own story out of it for your own home game.
So another question from Shadow Tool or Brad, depending on how you guys know him. There has historically been a problem with the game within a game nature of hacking. How do you manage this at the missions table?
Yeah, like when I look at 6th, I think 6th is a little bit more streamlined in terms of hacking. Like it's still a little bit more roles than some of the other archetypes. So like faces or well, we'll skip riggers because riggers are their own separate sub game as well. So a lot of the tricks that I use is I'll ask questions like, okay, so you're telling me that you're going to hit that host. Tell me the things that you want to do, and I'm going to tell you what the roles I'm going to expect from you. And then I just start rolling immediately with the list of roles that I need, and then writing them on a piece of paper. And then as they finish their rolls, then I just compare and say like, okay, well, you got 3 net hits. Are you happy with that? Do you want to continue forward? And just try to get it so that they're off doing their roles. And then once they're done, then I sort of tell the story of what they see. And just then that gets sort of woven into the storytelling of the group. Like, hey, your hacker just got in, and this is what they saw, and this is what they were able to steal, and now you have a list of the guards and their shifts. Like, if you, the thing that I think most people run into is trying to remember what all the defense roles are, and I just bring a cheat sheet for myself, or I depend on the player. Like, if you're running a Decker, you should always know what your attack roll is and what the defense roll is, and you can always help the GM going like, hey, I'm going to do this probe action, and a probe is my cracking plus logic against your willpower plus firewall, or firewall times 2. And that just helps the GM out as well.
Every Shadowrun character I have ever played has always had a cheat sheet. Like, yes. I can't live without it.
And honestly, for 6, the best cheat sheet you can have is for the myriad of edge actions. I want to say we're up to 47 edge actions that you can take.
Oh Wow.
Because Edge is sort of the mini game for 6th edition. It's a little less powerful, but you're constantly accruing it, and so you're able to put yourself in a better situation, or try to get it so that you have an advantage and you earn edge. Whereas in the past editions, you had a fixed amount of edge, and it slowly went down over the mission, so you saw a lot more edge hoarding. I haven't seen it as much with 6. I see people like spending their edge pretty heavily, which is fantastic.
So another sort of side question, but I really have to ask. This is from Billy Berserker 2876. How many D6s do you own? And I feel like this is a rite of passage. You have to have the correct answer here.
So I have 8 bricks of the standard chess X, and they're all clear because you have to have clear because the solid ones could have occlusions, which means they're not going to be even.
Of course.
So I've got 8 bricks of that, and I always bring. I have my set plus 2 sets I bring to. I always grab 2 at random to bring to a convention, as my. You may use these dice if you have forgotten your own. The ones that I do use is they're black and clear, and I've painted all the pips so that I can quickly read my successes. So right. I did paint my dice. Although I've been slowly moving over to I have 15 of the small but aluminum cast dice. That's not including. I've got a ton of other D6s as well. Like I've got piles of D6s I bought at cons just because I needed D6s because I forgot them.
Right.
So probably hundreds of D6s. I think Billy would approve.
So another question comes from Stainless Steel Devil Rat. How come Shadowrun Missions has custom rules?
So that's Hal. Hal and I have been working on missions together for a long time. This
is a long time debate.
So we always have removed rules that break the game for others. That's rule number 1. Is if there's something in the game that will break the experience for another player, it's got to go. That could be something as innocent as death blood magic, where if you decide to shoot your neighbor, you get additional blood points to spend on your magic, or as vile as having bounty hunters after you, which all of a sudden in the middle of a mission, bounty hunters show up. Well, it's really those things that break it into pieces. And so we've done things like deal with bounty hunters in a special way, which is, well, the bounty hunters come after you, but it's in between missions. And so you'll start a mission with damage because you were able to fight them off and you were able to live, but you didn't come out of it unscathed. The other one would be like blood magic, right? And that just creates an adversarial nature between players at the table, and we want to avoid that. That becomes not fun for whoever loses that sort of disagreement. But our standing mantra for the game is, if it's in a book, we're going to do our darndest to get it into the game. We want to put as many of those options forward as possible.
So, talking more about the rule side of this, is there a rules light version of Shadowrun?
There is. There's Shadowrun Anarchy. It's kind of rules light. It's funny. Like it's rules light because they've taken some of the augmentations and cyberware and magic, and they've moved it into a subset. So you don't have 20 or 30 options. Instead, you've got a maximum of 6. And so that does simplify it quite a bit, but you're still doing the same things. You take your agility plus your firearms, and you roll that many d6s. You count your hits, which are 5s or 6s. So it's still got all the crunchy bits of the stats, but the augmentations and the gear that you have is a little bit more limited.
Gotcha. So if we're talking about uh, not the rules light, but Shadowrun missions rule set. What is your favorite sort of gear munchkin combo?
Oh, favorite. I mean, I've got a bunch that are just like the bane of my existence. Uh, that would be Mystic Adepts and the close combat physical adept are current my bane for 6th edition. Mystic Adepts are a little bit like we've done our best to keep them somewhat controlled in terms of their growth path to not be overpowered. But a physical adept can hit harder than the largest gun in the game can hit you by like a factor of 2. So in terms of balance, it's like they're the far end of the balance spectrum, which makes it really difficult to go like, hey, I'm going to create a combat, and that combat is going to kill everyone except for that one phys ad that's like at the top of their game. And so those are the characters I think that makes it the most challenge for GMs to go like, look, I've got a bunch of non-combat monkeys that didn't min-max their combat, and then I've got 2 guys that min-max their combat skills, and now I need to make sure I don't kill all the others. That's probably my biggest sort of pet peeve of those. Do I have a favorite? I like the latest concept that I think is pretty fun, that I'm looking forward to seeing more of, because we did add some additional rules for SRM to make it more playable, is Alchemist.
Yeah.
And so we made it so that, yeah, so before, based on the core book rules, an alchemist could only make like 1 prep before they go into a mission, which would be like, hey, I'm going to make a healing patch. We changed that so you can make way more than that, and they're good for the mission. So you can start the mission, you can make probably 5 or 6 different patches, like, oh, this one's going to boost how fast you are, and this one's going to make you stronger, and this one's going to, if you touch them, fireball's going to come out, which you should never do. Like, those are some of the changes that we've made, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Now, are those changes part of the Shadowrun 6th World Seattle edition, or is this specific to missions?
It is specific missions. So I always feel a little bit bad about this. So we have a missions guide. We are currently at 67 pages. It is a very, very long and deep. Basically says what's legal, what's illegal. It's got a GM guide in the beginning as well for how to handle certain situations. But yeah, it's a pretty dense doc. I actually had the chance to help with the Seattle edition. So I didn't work on the core book, but there's some additional content for Seattle in the back. And so I was able to help out and write some of that as well, which was quite fun.
Now, that is in stores now. What's the most exciting thing that's in there?
All the errata. Yeah, we had an opportunity to fix some of the things that were a little bit busted, and actually Stainless Steel Devil Rat in the chat is the errata lead, and worked really heavily with Catalyst and made sure that they are aware of all the things that were breaking, and helped reword some of the sections so that it fit, and that's fantastic. The other is they produced some additional gear, which is pretty cool, which there's a drone and some mapping software so that you can map areas out with your drone, and I think that was just a really slick addition to the game.
That is. So I am not the most versed in Shadowrun, but I have played some. However, there's a comment in chat that I'd like you to explain to me a bit. Stainless Steel Devil Rat says Vind X is the best thing in 6th edition, and I need to know what that is. What is Vind X?
So Vind X is from the Rigger book. So you're familiar with Riggers?
Yeah.
Okay, so Vind X is a drone, which is a vending machine that also can like shoot pop cans out of the basin and cause explosions, and it's basically a sneaky, like, tanky drone that you have at your disposal, and but you have to sneak it into places in advance because it's not fast. But in terms of the weird cool factor, it is all of that. Like, it is fantastic.
I once saw a vending machine that had like salami in it, and I really think I'd rather have a vending machine that blew things up personally.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you. Although I want to say I'm guessing there was some inspiration from the writers from some horror films where vending machines attacked people. Like that's my rough guess.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, as he says, vending machine sushi you should never trust.
Absolutely never. Absolutely never.
But yeah, there's a lot of we're starting to get more of the core books out. So there's the magic book is out, the rigor book is out. I believe they've announced that the companion is coming out, which has got additional options for players to pick from for their sort of base history. And so yeah, there's a bunch of more material that's coming out. There's been a bunch of plot books that they've produced as well that are quite fun. We've been taking advantage of for some of the mission writing as well. Because it's always fun to read a book and then get a chance to play some of the things that they're talking about.
Yeah, Stainless Steel Devil Rat just said they announced a companion for May. So that might be interesting.
And both he and I actually worked on that, so we're
nice.
excited to see it come out.
Any
I can't
teasers
spoil
out for us?
I wish I could. I will say that if you've read the 5th edition Run Faster, it is probably got some things that are in there because we like some of the things there. We want to bring them forward in the 6th edition.
Fair enough.
As to which ones it is, that's up to you to figure out.
Of course, yeah. No, I understand. We are coming to the end of our time, so there's just a couple of questions that I want to wrap up. We've talked a lot about Shadowrun missions online. How often are events scheduled on there, and how do people sign up for them?
Well, so they have a Discord. I would recommend hitting their webpage and really getting in further. Just for the Discord alone, there's a lot of really good chat there. There's a lot of help if you want to build your character. Usually it seems like we've got one running about every 2 weeks, and if people are really passionate, they can join as GMs to help us, get that up. There's definitely good reasons to GM for Catalyst. If you like going to the bigger cons, I've done that for years where I volunteer and I get a hotel room, which is a really great perk. But yeah, they get missions online about every 2 weeks, and they're going through the different seasons. They've got both 5th and 6th edition games going on.
And they sign up through that website, right?
They do. So you buy your tickets through the website.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, do we have any final questions from chat? Had some really, really good discussions. I guess the last thing that I want to ask is, where can people find you and all the stuff that you promote?
So the easiest way to find me is, well, I tend to be quiet for the most part. Like my goal is to make sure that we give authors a shot at trying to write. Like that's my number one goal for Shadowrun missions, is to give folks a chance to create something cool, and I'll work really hard to get that in the PDF for them. But if you have curiosity for missions, there's facebook.com/srmissions is one way to get a hold of me. It will email me, so I know if there's something waiting. I do use social media, but I'm not on it all day.
Fair.
But yeah, it'll let me know if you've got questions. Another way to reach me is actually through the Shadowrun missions online. I'm one of the folks that are sitting in chat, and I'm always glad to answer any questions regarding Shadowrun, or if I promote something, it's going to be probably missions related. But yeah.
So as our closing question, it's kind of a two-parter. One part comes from Stainless Steel Devil Rat. I am so sorry. I have said your name wrong every single time.
SSDR works as well too.
SSDR, I like that better. Who is the coolest Shadowrun missions in PC? And Brad had a follow-up, which is, what is your favorite accent to do for a missions in PC?
So the coolest one, I'm gonna go with the 6th edition one since I'm now like doing that. I have a deep love of Nini Xiaolu. She is our Chinese American triad representative, and she is her nickname is the Shark, and she's just quite fun from a sort of a backstory, but just how she deals with the runners is just super cool. She has a high amount of integrity, which I like, but if you mess with her, she will cut you.
I love characters like that.
And in terms of accents, I really will avoid anything that's cockneyed. I cannot do that. Southern Bumpkin is probably my favorite. Although I will do some terrible Russian accents for fun. Although I do a lot less of them in the most recent set of month. But yeah, Southern accents are by far my favorite. I know, I love Simon too. I really do. Simon Andrews is my favorite of the 5th edition ones. I love Simon. He is so slimy. And not Sid Gambetti slimy. Sid Gambetti is too slimy.
That's funny. All right. Well, that does wrap it up for us today. Thank you so much for spending an hour with me and talking about Shadowrun missions. And honestly, this has just been highly enjoyable.
Well, thank you for inviting me to participate in the Midwest Gaming Fest. This is fantastic. I hope to see more online festivals. I think this is just great for everyone.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm really excited to see everybody in person again, but also online brings us together in its own unique way. So I'm really glad everybody's made it.
Exactly. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, we will see you all very soon. We do have some panels that are going on tomorrow. And Aaron, what games are you running the rest of the weekend?
So I've got one game scheduled tomorrow night, which is the first mission for season 2081. And then I believe I'm on a panel tomorrow as well to talk about writing to GMing. Maybe.
No, that's the gaming podcast. Oh, yes, you are on that one. So from writing to running. Sorry, I forgot. And then also there is
yeah.
Never mind. Just from writing to running, and that is at Brad. Help me out. 2:00, and I will be hosting that too.
So yeah, if folks want to join us tomorrow at 8, like I've got a couple open seats still at the event. Always glad to have folks jump in and experience some Shadowrun.
Yeah, it'll be well worth your time. So hopefully we will see you all tomorrow, and game on, everybody.